Royer, Charles Royer of Seattle, who's first vice president. Mayor Arthur Holland, who is secretary. Arthur's from Trenton, New Jersey. And Mayor Joseph Riley, who's treasurer. South Carolina. We're very impressed by this structure and by Andy's sales pitch. I'm sure we'll all rush out and buy something. I have been very impressed by Atlanta and its fabled hospitality, which turned out not to be a fable at all, but true. This has been an unusual Democratic convention. We haven't had a serious floor fight yet. And I say yet. We've been unfortunate for the last several conventions, at least the last two conventions, in having been divided right up to and through the convention, of having left the convention a divided party, and therefore a party destined to lose. We've changed that this time. I believe the Democrats are together for a number of reasons. And the mayors of this nation know those reasons better than almost anyone. The basic social problems of America are centered in its cities. And no geographical part of the United States has suffered more under the Reagan administration over the last 8 years than our cities. Those of us who remember the urban policy that was adopted by President Carter upon the urgings of the Democratic Conference of Mayors and the National Conference of Mayors, that included UDAGs and block grants and housing grants, loans, improved health facilities, attention to the infrastructure. Remember that our cities, which had suffered a hard time, especially our older cities across America, started to come back. That was the beginning of the comeback for Detroit, for instance, which is one of our older industrial cities. But it was true across the nation. For the last 8 years, the urban policy has been all but eliminated. The drastic reductions in such vital programs as housing, as the UDAG program, the block grant program, the revenue sharing program, the public works program, you name them. They have all fallen under the Reagan Act. And that is why we know, more than any segment of the American public, we mayors, of the absolute necessity of electing a new president, of going forward with the caucus and Benson. Andy referred to the brilliant and inspirational speech last night given by Jesse Jackson. And if that speech had any theme, it was unity and the urgent need for us coming together and moving forward to deal with the programs the election to ensure that the problems of the cities are not lost. The platform is a very general platform. It's a very good platform as far as it goes. It's been mentioned that it doesn't mention city once. They talk about urban areas. It talks about communities. And I guess by inference, that means us. But we know they can do better than that. It's up to us to see that they do better than that. And I guess I used the wrong pronoun, that the Democratic Party does better than that. That, I believe, is the real challenge of these elections, that the basic needs of the poor, the basic needs of the elderly, the basic needs of the minorities, the basic needs of education of children, which are all located primarily within our cities, are attended to. We have a heavy responsibility. I have a button, which I'm sure you all have by now. It says mayors will make the difference. In 1988, that applause was led by Tom Cochran, who furnished this button. But nonetheless, Tom, it's true. Mayors will make a difference in 88. It's up to us to leave here and organize our cities. It's up to us to come together again as we have in the past and construct a more detailed urban policy. We have urban policy statements which can be and will be distributed all across this nation. We all have to hit the campaign trail. We all have to go all out. But what I am confident will be a victory for the cities and a victory for the people and a victory for America in November.
I'd like to ask all of the Georgia mayors to please stand for a minute. All of the Georgia mayors who are part of our host family this meeting. Now I'd like to ask all of the Atlanta City Council to please stand, part of the host fellowship of this meeting. Then I'd like to ask 4 generations of young Democrats. That may sound like a contradiction in terms, but my mother, Mrs. Daisy Young, my wife, Jean Young, she had to go. My daughters, Andrea and Lisa, and my son-in-law, Tony. My brother, Walter. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Idella Childs, who's a member of the City Council of Marion, Alabama. And my granddaughter, Taylor Marie Stanley, 9 months old. A city is no better than its citizens. And when you can raise up citizens and train them up, and keep them working in your cities, sharing their talents, it's the best way to get a great city. It's good, and we do our best to import talent in, but there's no talent any better in our city than the talent we've raised up. 2 of the people I talk about all the time and embarrass them because they basically grew up on the so-called poor side of town. One, Herman Russell, who's listed in Black Enterprise, is worth $150 million. That's a conservative estimate, we say. And the other is John Portman, who also grew up on the south side of town, went to Atlanta Public Schools, went to Georgia Tech, and as a part of the Navy V-12 program and became trained as an engineer, an architect. We've got the president of Georgia Tech here with us, Dr. Creasine, and then came back and began to build in the heart of downtown. And when everybody else ran off to the suburbs, and when everybody else ran up north or down south to South Florida, John Portman stayed here. He stayed here, and bit by bit, he has built a city within a city. This is just one of the Portman creations, and only a month ago, he announced a new 60-story tower to go adjacent to the present Portman properties next to the Marriott Marquis and the Regency, which are also Portman properties. And John Portman has been, for us, an outstanding corporate citizen. One of the reasons is that he's been a very good supporter of almost every mayor that has been elected since he's been involved in the development of downtown. And so it's with a great deal of pleasure that I ask the Portman family to stand, because now his 5 sons and 1 daughter are involved with him. His wife, who's not here, is also involved in this operation. But I'd like to ask John Portman if he would come forward and say a word to us in behalf of our sponsors for today, AT&T, the Coca-Cola Company, the Georgia Power Company, and the Portman Companies. John Portman.
You notice I'm the only guy that pulled out a note. I noticed that Coleman didn't have a note, and Andy doesn't even know how to spell a note. I've never seen Andy with a note. But, you know, it really is an honor to be here and to represent the private, public sector sponsors who have put on this affair. And, you know, I feel really grossly intimidated because having been, I don't think I've ever walked in a mayor's office around the country that I didn't feel a little intimidated. So you can imagine, with all you guys sitting out there now, what kind of position this puts me in. But you know what? I'm going to get even with you. This gives me a chance to preach a little. And Andy, I'm not a preacher. You know, I once told Andy, I said, Andy, if I could talk like you, I would own the world. Andy said, if I could draw like you, I'd own the world. But really, you know, I've spent the last 30 years working in the central cities of this country. And I know many of you, and I have worked with many of you. And when I think about it, I think it's been working at something that has been meaningful. Since World War II, as our country has changed, as we've gone and fragmented our cities, you know, in the old days, the cities were closely knit. And in the basement, there was maybe a laundry. On the first floor, there was maybe a store. On the second floor, a doctor's office, and people lived upstairs. And everything was closely knit. We didn't have the transportation. We didn't have the affluence to afford the transportation. We didn't have the communications. And after World War II, as we began to expand and as we began to become more affluent, everything began to fragment and the city began to unravel. People who had fought in World War II and had dreamed of this white picket fence in the house and out in the woods. They came back home, and everyone wanted that. And as we went from no-car family to one-car family, two-car family on up, and as the highways provided the means, and as we became more affluent, our cities really began to suffer from disease. The disease of fragmentation, the disease of erosion, and that's been going on all these years. And you know, in working in all these cities, I have found and come to the conclusion that cities, like companies, need leadership. And where is that leadership? The leadership has to start with the mayor. The mayor represents the people. The mayor is the image of the city. The mayor is the focus when anything concerning the city is brought up. So the mayor, in a sense, is the walking city. Now that's quite a responsibility. But with that responsibility, there comes a great opportunity to make a tremendous contribution. As we all know, our cities are fragmented into all kinds of special interests. We have the preservation groups, we have the developers, we have the neighborhood groups, we have all kinds of groups. The mayor has to be the arbitrator of all of these things and somehow to fuse them, to bring them together, and to create a vision and a focus. And it's only through creating a vision and a focus and getting the people to believe in it. And for them to believe in it, they have to believe in the mayor. And to make the cities work, we need both the public and private sector. Sometimes that's not understood. The private sector takes a tremendous beating. Sometimes they should. A lot of times it's overdone. But the private sector provides the investment. And what is the private sector looking for? It's looking for confidence, it's looking for commitment, and it's looking for trust. And it's the mayor's responsibility to somehow be the leader, to bring all these forces together, to unify, to move the city forward. It's a tremendous job out there, because in our free society, you can't make people do anything. People are going to do what they want to do, not necessarily what you morally think they should do. The trick is, how can we create circumstances by which we get people to do what we want them to do? But not only because that's what we want them to do, but because they want to do it, because they want to be a part of it. So we have a great responsibility in our cities to, first of all, eliminate the perception of crime. Fear of our cities has got to be eradicated. We absolutely have to create the city as an economic viable thing to serve society. As the economic vehicle erodes, as the jobs leave and go to the suburbs or to outer spaces, our cities are poorer. And what happens is that we leave our citizens who are less fortunate with an inability to follow those jobs, So consequently, we have to provide public transportation. If the jobs are going to go, we've got to provide a way for the workers to get to them. So public transportation becomes a vital necessity for all of our cities. But really, what it really means is that the mayors of the cities of this country, if they can provide the vision and the focus, and if they can create the confidence and the trust, and pull people together and unite, and in unity there is success. In fragmentation, there is failure. And as a spinoff of Reverend Jackson's speech last night, this is a time for unity. So let's have at it. Thank you.
I wish every one of you had a John Portman, because he puts his money where his mouth is. He's brought into this city, without any government help, between $1.5 billion and $2 billion of construction, and we're about to put up another $500 million onto that. And that makes him our largest taxpayer, and I'd appreciate it if you give him another hand. He's also taken a beating along with me this week as we attempt to organize and